Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 243 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 17 of A Feast for Crows. That's Cersei 4.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Of course, unless you have the Buy Me a Coffee spoiler tier, then we will spoil. But hopefully, we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to a television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm good. I'm working very hard, so I'm kind of worn out, but I'm enthused to get away from work and do this.
All right.
This is what I need. And
well, I will say there was a point yesterday where I thought there is no way this episode is going to be ready by tonight. The sheet was completely blank as of yesterday evening.
There was a point about 45 minutes ago when I thought we might still not make it because I was still struggling to get my stuff in there. But you did 90% of it, so thank you for doing that. So this is the point in the podcast where I turn to you for amusing and ribald anecdotes. Why don't you start trotting them out, circus boy?
Well, I don't... we're still focused on the whole graduation thing. Molly graduated officially on Sunday, and it was very nice, very nice. Took a lot of really nice pictures. And this coming Saturday, we're having her graduation party, which I believe you will be in attendance.
I will actually see you. We will be face to face for a moment. Yes, just briefly.
You're missing some sort of soccer or cricket event.
Yes, it's soccer. It's the European National Championships. So Spain will be playing Croatia while I pretend to be interested in your daughter's future and well-being.
You gotta love the honesty.
No, I am very interested in that too. But if it was on in another room and I could keep half an eye on it, I would be okay with that. Just
all right,
so you know.
I will see what I did put together a slideshow of her life that will be playing on most screens, but I'm sure I can find you one that it won't be on.
This is the moment where she scored for Croatia against Spain.
But I'm a little nervous about the party because it is. To say it is the largest event we have ever hosted would be an understatement, because the biggest event we've ever hosted is probably 10 people, 15.
When me and Carson came over for dinner that time.
Right, yeah, exactly. Molly has invited more than 40 kids, and so far we have 36 RSVP yeses. And that's just the kids. That's not the adults that like you and some neighbors and other friends. So I'm nervous. I'm really nervous. I don't know where we're going to put everybody. And it's going to be in the mid-90s, so nobody's going to want to
indoors is preferable.
Yes, exactly. So I'm nervous. I'll update everyone next week on how it went, if I still have a house left standing when all is said and done.
But on the subject of sport, which we weren't, how exciting is it that the United States are getting good at cricket?
Yes, I'm sure that is exciting.
It's such a shame that so for those not in the know, the World T20 cricket is going on. T20 just is a form of cricket. It's they get 20 overs each to score as many runs as possible. It's not important if you don't understand cricket, but okay. It's just there are multiple World Cups for the different forms of cricket. This is the T20 one, but it's being hosted in the Caribbean and the United States, and so the United States got an invite, which they don't normally qualify because they're not good enough, but they got an invite because they're hosting. Okay. And in the opening game they beat Canada, which is fine because I think Canada are hosting too. That's the only reason they're there. So it's right. This was the two worst teams in the tournament battling it out, and the USA won it. It's like, okay, no big deal yet.
Low bar.
But then in their second game, they played Pakistan. Pakistan are former world champions. They were runners-up in this tournament last time, and the United States beat Pakistan at cricket.
That is shocking. I mean, I don't know the details, but it seems shocking.
The thing about T20 is T20 is the most random form of cricket. The upsets can happen because it's very short, and so it's sort of like a baseball game. In a one-game baseball game, the worst team might win.
Sure.
If the batters, that's why they do the World Series as a series, because over 7 games you get a better representation of. T20 cricket is short form and upsets can happen more easily. Okay. But it is still a seismic result. It's absolutely incredible. But
wow. Go USA.
So and so now the USA have got 1 game left, and that's against Ireland, who are another mediocre team. And if the USA beat Ireland, they will have qualified for the group. They will have got through the group stages and be in the knockout stages, which is an amazing achievement. Absolutely amazing achievement.
You know, it would be curious if that happens, if people here in the States will start to pay attention at all.
Well, it's
got to get on SportsCenter, right? It's got to get on ESPN.
That's the problem. The rights have been sold to Willow Television, which I had no idea how you get hold of that channel. I've not seen a single moment of this.
I didn't know it existed.
Exactly. I mean, you can't. Nobody's watching this. I mean, presumably every expat Indian has Willow TV, so that's where it makes its money.
Okay, but right.
The rest of us don't even know how to get hold of that thing. So there's been none of it on television, which is such a shame because, I mean, to be frank, Americans do love a winner, and they would be very excited by this, Right. And you know what I found? I occasionally get accused of being a little bit anti-American when it comes to sports, that I tend to cheer against them. But it's not that, because I was cheering like crazy for the Americans in the cricket. I'm just anti-favorites.
Oh, right.
If you're the favourite to win, I want the other team to win. And the US is almost always the favourite at just about every sport. But believe me, cricket is a sport where they're not. So
Cricket is an outlier. Soccer is too, right?
They're getting there at soccer. They should have got there by now at soccer, honestly.
Well, women's soccer,
act together.
US.
Women's soccer, they're the best. Yeah, they are the powerhouse of the world at that. But
right.
Men's soccer, it's kind of disappointing they haven't really pushed on to be world champions yet. I predicted 20 years ago that they would have been world champions by now, and they haven't really come close. One other story for you. I went to take Carson a cup of coffee to school the other day where she was teaching.
Oh, that's nice.
To get into the school, they all know me. Just wave me in. No. Go through the process. So the process involved typing my name in and sticking my mug in front of the iPad, basically.
Right. Yep.
But I wasn't really paying attention to what it was saying, and it was actually saying, please hold up your ID and we'll take a photo of that. So I kept moving my face closer and closer to this camera.
You started to think it was a retina scan. You had your eyeball up
what
there.
What is this thing doing? And honestly, the 3 ladies who work in the front office just let me do this for minutes on end before finally coming and rescuing me.
Oh, that's good.
When I saw Carson sort of came to get me, and I told her that story as we walked to her classroom, and her legs buckled at the amusement of me being a boomer in the front office. The thing was, on the screen it had like a frame, which with hindsight was the same shape as my driver's license.
Yep.
But it looked like it might be the frame of a photograph. So I thought it was slightly unnecessarily wide, but
for those with big heads is all.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get down to some business, shall we? How did we leave Cersei Lannister? Well, last we saw of Cersei was just the last chapter, of course, because that was a Jaime chapter, when Jaime saw her hear news of the birth of Tyrion. Not that one. Lollis Stokeworth's new baby. Jaime cautioned her, Cersei, about courting new friends of questionable origins, Qyburn and Taena being the 2 most obvious examples. Cersei was not in a receptive mood. Prior to that, we saw her on edge at Tommen's wedding and channeling her inner heiress in burning down the Tower of the Hand with wildfire. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
Okay. Well, I'll say ahead of time, this is a rather long summary, but that is because this was a rather long chapter.
This was a gargantuan chapter. Yes. I thought it would never end. I'm like, how are we going to get through? It's going to be 2 hours this episode.
I thought the same thing. Once they get through anyway, we'll get there. So here goes the summary. 3 wretched men are waiting in the Queen's audience chamber. By the looks of them, she's doubtful of success, but willing to give them a chance. They remove the head from a sack. As expected, the decaying, maggot-covered thing does not belong to her brother. The men balk when she says as much. The small man claimed to be a sparrow, but they knew he was lying. Seems he wasn't, as the head has a nose and Tyrion did not.
Rather than scaring off future dwarf hunters by punishing them for murdering an innocent man, she sends the men away. As she and Qyburn, her new master of whisperers, walk to meet her small council, he informs her that he's completed the task she commanded him. The beetles took a while, but they have finally eaten the skin off the gigantic head. It is ready for Dorne Martell. Qyburn has proven himself useful in his new role. Varys had always maintained he was irreplaceable, but it seems that wasn't the case.
Of the small council represented, only Grand Maester Pycelle remains from the previous administration. She's pulled all of the roses out by their roots, leaving only men loyal to her. Just as Cersei hoped, when she introduces Lord Qyburn as her new Master of Whisperers, Grand Maester Pycelle turns purple. His arguments against the man fall on deaf ears with the Queen. She's given counselors new titles, as there will be no masters aside from her.
As Hand of the King, she's tapped Sir Harys Swift, father-in-law to her uncle Kevin. Not the strongest hostage, but better than nothing. And the poor fool is too dim to even realise that he is a hostage. The man is bursting with pride over his elevated new role. Her Justiciar Orton Merryweather asks about the new king and the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard joining them. The king is too young, and Jaime is being fit for a new hand. Besides, Jaime would find this as dull as Tommen would.
Cersei is pleased with the laughs that draws from around the table. The more they laugh at Jaime, the less of a threat he is. After the Arbor Gold is poured, it's on to the first order of business. Grand Maester Pycelle reports that Prince Doran has taken his nieces into custody, but he can't begin to calm the seething masses in Sunspear until they receive their promised justice. Cersei gives the good news. Gregor's skull is ready for its journey south. Balon Swan will hand-deliver the package.
To herself, the Queen thinks that Swan has another task, but not one to be shared aloud. Next, Sir Harys mentions the 2,000 sparrows flooding the city and more arriving each day. Cersei figures as long as they do not commit treason, they are the soon-to-be new High Septon's problem. That leads into a discussion of who will replace the recently deceased High Septon. Grand Maester Pycelle and Qyburn disagree on who the leading contender might be. Cersei does not care as long as the man has more vigour than his predecessor.
Next order of business, the Vale Lords plan to oust Petyr Baelish from the Eyrie. How shall the crown come down on the matter? It seems Littlefinger is unconcerned. Last he wrote, he barely mentioned the Lords and asked for old tapestries of Robert's. It's decided that the crown will stay out of it, so long as no harm comes to Littlefinger. The Queen thinks he's of better use in King's Landing.
The discussion turns to the need for new royal ships, as so few survived the Battle of the Blackwater. Aligning with the Ironborn is briefly considered before being shut down. However, there are no funds to build new ships. The Crown's costs are too high, primarily from Goldcloak salaries. Cersei announces a hold on payments to the Faith and the Iron Bank until the war is over. From those savings, her Grand Admiral Orain Waters will build his ships.
Again, Grand Maester Pycelle is the only one to not vociferously back her decision. He points out that the Iron Bank doesn't take kindly to such maneuvers. They get their money one way or another. But Cersei is unconcerned and the matter is dropped. Harris speaks up about claims from Lord Walder Frey. Cersei's heard enough demands from him. Qyburn says the word on the street is that the crown was complicit in the heinous crimes of the Red Wedding.
Cersei feels that Lord Walder will die soon, and his heir might be willing to toss some unwanted relatives onto the sword to satisfy the offended masses. Again, the agenda rolls on. The Golden Company has broken their contract with Myr. It is rumoured they have been hired by Stannis. Qyburn has heard they are headed to Volantis, as Stannis has nothing to pay them with. Stannis is said to be wooing the wildlings, but the Northmen are joining with Roose Bolton. The Umbers, Risewells, and Manderlys are specifically named.
The Northmen will aid the Bolton bastard in freeing Moat Cailin. Lord Wyman Manderly insists on the return of his heir before he will bend the knee, though. The Manderlys have been approached by Stannis. The Onion Knight sailed to White Harbor to win their allegiance. Manderly has taken Seaworth into custody and asks what he should do with him. Cersei wants Seaworth killed as a lesson to others.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
It seems the Night's Watch has joined with Stannis. Ned Stark's bastard has given Stannis lands and castles. The small council calls for a halt on sending men to the wall until Snow is removed. However, Qyburn thinks the opposite is in order. Send 100 men to take the Black, but with a secret mission of killing Snow. As would be expected, the Queen loves that idea. She knows just what to do. Leave it to her.
When the final matter is talk of dragons in the east, the Queen dismisses it. Tell me when the talk is of dwarves, she says. Later in her chambers, Cersei sends for Osney Kettleblack and chats with Tyanna Merryweather until the knight arrives. Alone, the knight wastes little time before making physical advances on Cersei. She allows him to clumsily grope at her breasts. He wants her, but she says he's already had her for good deeds done. If he wants her again, he'll need to do more.
She wants him to seduce Marjorie. But if he does that, he will face punishment, right? Tommen will have no choice but to send him to the wall, she explains for the confused Osney. Once there, he will kill a boy, and after that he will be pardoned and return to King's Landing a lord, and the Queen's concubine. She seals the deal with a kiss. The man is in.
Later, as she has her hair brushed out, she thinks of how she's made for this. Once Marjorie has been found in a compromising position with Osney, even Mace Tyrell will be unable to defend her. And neither Stannis nor Jon Snow could question why he was sent to the wall. One final measure. She calls for Tyanna. She tells the woman to inform Marjorie that she has a secret admirer. Make her work for it, but then reveal that it is none other than Osney Kettleblack.
Oof.
I tell you.
Yep.
You know, once... When that long meeting is over, you think, okay, that's the end of the chapter. But no, there's like 7 more pages after that.
Exactly. There's the whole Kettleblack thing.
Yes.
Which is an interesting plan. I mean, that's the thing, when you're not reading Cersei chapters, you get sort of lured into thinking, God, Cersei's so dumb. But she is actually quite smart. But again, she just misdirects her smarts towards scheming and plotting when she should be doing other things, I think.
Yes, exactly. She is definitely smart. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes her desire to see herself succeed gets in the way of what's.
That's a very interesting point. I wonder if that's I always like to sort of think about myself before sort of slandering other people here, but I wonder if that's a common problem with people who want that sort of affirmation of their successes more than they want sort of global success,
Right. Yes.
I think I've worked with people who cared more about them succeeding than the organization they were part of.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I imagine that's the case. It probably lends to this kind of decision making.
Yeah. But the whole thing starts with another grim reminder of the sort of cruelty of the world. This poor Septon was beheaded just for being small, and then there was rumors, or rather there was stories of like children being beheaded just because they were ugly, and
right.
Things like that. Yeah,
yes, that was one of her thoughts when she saw that the head was, at least it was the head of a dwarf. The previous head was of an ugly child, and that's terrible on so many levels.
You'd like to think that Cersei might say, "Let's stop doing this because the damage I'm causing is too great," but that probably never crossed her mind.
No, she said she would. What was the line? Stack dwarf heads 10 feet high to get Tyrion. So, I will say that the dwarf head perfectly matches the description, the bulbous nose and being a sparrow, of the kind man that Brienne met in Duskendale that told her about Dick Crabb.
Oh, yes.
And
I'd forgotten that.
headed for
Heading
King's
to King's Landing
to join the other Sparrows. So, yeah, and as you said, she decides not to punish them for killing an innocent man for fear of causing future Tyrion hunters to think twice. So, showing great love and respect for her subjects, my queen.
Yes.
It's like we were just saying, her motive is usually what's best for her, not what is the best thing to do for the realm. So
true.
It's rarely
Qyburn,
success.
Yeah. Qyburn is finding his feet. He's inherited Varys' network, and they've come out of the woodwork to find Qyburn because obviously Varys was paying them.
Right.
And now he isn't. So they need a new paymaster. And I think Qyburn is well suited to this job. But what's interesting to me is that Qyburn is dressing the part. He's a couple of times it was mentioned in this chapter how he was dressed in finery.
Yes.
Very unbefitting of a former maester and member of the Brave Companions.
Right. I think the description is something like it was the garb was similar to a maester's, but in pure white with gold trim. So an elevated maester look, I guess.
Yeah. So he must have got hold of quite a lot of money to get all of the sparrows. All of the what did Varys call them? His spiders.
He called them birds.
These birds,
little birds. But what? But Qyburn calls them something else, and I can't remember what it is now off the top of my head. But they're basically former little birds of Varys's.
Yeah. But I mean, he must have splashed the cash to get them on board, and he's obviously splashing the cash on himself as well.
Right.
So
yes.
he's not helping the whole financial situation of the realm.
No. But Cersei thinks to herself, Varys thought had us all believing he was indisposable, but turns out it was the silver, not the spider. But the thing that the information that Qyburn gives that causes her to think that is that the bells will stop ringing at the Sept of Baelor come evening. And I was like, that could have just been listed on the outside of the Sept, bell times, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Later, he proves he's not quite up to Varys' par yet when he doesn't know the succession order for Balon Greyjoy. He remembers that Theon Greyjoy was a ward of Ned Stark, but then someone was like, I think it was Orton Merryweather, was like, I thought he was dead. I thought he'd been killed. Right. And he has no response to that. Nobody can remember if he's got any brothers or anything. So not exactly off and running.
That's right. Yeah, when she thought, oh yes, he's as good as Varys ever was, you were kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop of him proving to not be as good as Varys, and that was the perfect example of that.
So shall we go around the table here?
Yeah, go around the table, please. Yes, that's what I wanted you to do.
Okay. Well, so first we have Sir Harris Swift. He is her hand of the king, and according to Cersei, the description she uses for him is too dim to realize he's a hostage, which is not an ideal word to describe your second in command. Probably, everyone says surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, and she picked.
That's not what Cersei says.
It's really not. And as we mentioned in the summary, he was named Hand of the King basically to keep her Uncle Kevin honest and prevent any retaliation, because Harris is Kevin's father-in-law, his wife's father. So
yes. The book says good father, but I think we've simplified it for everybody. Yeah.
Yes.
And then Orton Merryweather, who is husband to Taena Merryweather, has been made the Justicar. It's an Essosi term for Master of Laws. And Cersei says that she's going to use these Essosi versions of the titles because she wants to be the only master at the table.
Except for, I swear she referred to Qyburn as Master of Whisperers.
Yes, she did. That's interesting.
I think she did. So, -1, I guess. One extra master. Oh, yeah, she actually had considered in the previous Jaime chapter, she considered Orton Merryweather for Hand of the King, but I guess she decided that having a shield against Kevin was more important than pleasing Tyanna and making Orton Merryweather Hand of the King.
Yeah.
So next we have up Orain Waters, who is dubbed the Grand Admiral, which is an Asasi term for Master of Ships. The previous Master of Ships was Mace Tyrell, by the way. And Jaime, of course, last chapter, when it came up that she was going to name Orain Master of Ships, Jaime thought that he was being appointed simply because Cersei found him handsome. Mm-hmm. Because he's really young, if you recall. He's 21 or 2. I think he's 22 or so. So...
Yeah, and looks like Rhaegar, right? I mean,
yes.
And she thinks to herself, maybe if he just shaved his beard off, that would be even better, right?
Right. Yes, and she also figures, based on the way he looks at her, that he wants her. So,
oh man, it is Cersei. They all do.
Based on how the chapter ends, she might use that to her advantage if possible.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
And then we have Giles Rosby.
But for half a second, I thought you really started coughing.
Lord Treasurer. Which again is a new term for master of coin. He is of poor health, and the more we spend time with him, the worse his health appears. So I don't see him being this for a long term.
No, yeah, he's really scary sick. You know, like he coughs up blood constantly. He couldn't get a sentence out without coughing up blood, which sounds like a major health issue here.
Yeah.
So. But he was pegged, if you recall from the previous Cersei chapter, he was pegged for this role to keep Garth the Gross, out of the role that Tywin and Mace had. They had planned on making Garth the Master of Coin. The previous Master of Coin was Littlefinger. Tyrion, and before that, Littlefinger. So that's the succession order. And then we have Qyburn, who apparently still is Master of Whisperers, even though there's not supposed to be any other masters.
Well, none of these idiots anyway, but he can be.
Right.
And then Grand Maester Pycelle is still just a Grand Maester, but that gets him onto the small council apparently. And he's going through a story arc, is our Grand Maester Pycelle.
He is, yes. We'll get to him, and it's definitely noticeable. Definitely noticeable change in Grand Maester Pycelle. But you know what I take away from all this is, as she says, she ripped all of the roses out by their roots. She removed all existing members under Tywin, which included several Reach houses, Mathis Rowan, Paxter Redwine, and Doran Martell was also supposed to be an advisor. Of course, Oberyn died. But as we said earlier, this just doesn't seem like the sharpest small council. They don't even know the status for the heir for the House Greyjoy. Now, we know, we've been in the Iron Islands. We know it's getting really complicated, but they don't even know the basics of how the successions should go up there.
Yeah, I mean, that when you listed the previous small council, that's A-list. I mean, that's an A-list, and this is a low B, probably a C-list, basically. And
it is.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, you can come from a small house and be talented, but I don't think there's any proof that these are. And like you said, one thing I would do if I got elevated to the small council is I would start brushing up on things.
Right. Start learning your job.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to realize, or at least want to correct Cersei, that House Manderly was originally from the Reach, and so very much has Andal blood and a strong knighthood culture. And she thinks of Wyman Manderly as a old fat man wrapped in sealskins, but they're different from the rest of the North because of their roots from the Reach.
Interesting.
So no one's even saying, well, actually, they're...
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know who might have made that comment is a Mace Tyrell or a Pax of Red Wine.
Yes.
Because they would have known that. So tell me, is the mountain actually dead? It seems like his skull has been removed and his skin eaten off, but I honestly thought he was going to pull through.
Well, as Aurane Waters says, usually when the head's been removed, death ensues. I know, though, right? I mean, there was such a storyline here. The Hound, he was so hell-bent on killing his brother, and now that storyline is gone. And I was also wondering, so, okay, does that mean that Tyrion's guilt is now in doubt, that the mountain died of injuries from the trial by combat? Is this
the
now
gods
considered...
went, I don't know.
Actually, kind of a hung jury. Let's do it again.
So Balon Swan is to take the head down to Dorne and Martell, but she's got a secret mission for him. Do we care to theorize what that mission might be? I mean, she's already got a member of the Kingsguard there. What could the mission be?
Well, based on just kind of thinking it through, it would have to have something to do with getting Myrcella home, right? It wasn't her idea in the first place, and now there's no one to stop her from any whim that she has, good or bad.
Yeah, my first thought was it might be to remove Trystane, like kill Trystane, but then that's a death sentence for Myrcella. So then I immediately discounted that and came to that same conclusion. It's extracting Myrcella back to King's Landing.
Right. That's what makes most sense.
Yeah. But I wonder if you couldn't just tell Aris Oakheart to just do it. He's already there.
Maybe the mission is, because they don't want to send a bird, Balon Swan will whisper in Aris Oakheart's ear, "Get Myrcella out of Dorne as soon as possible on orders of the Queen."
It's slightly funny that they don't want to send a bird, but they are sending Swan.
I see the irony there, yes.
And actually, it's kind of handy that the mountain is so big, because the box that his skull goes down in probably would fit Myrcella.
Yes. They could just pull her knees up to her chest. I mean, if you think of the way she got to Dorne in the first place, this can't be much worse, really.
I was struck by the sycophants on the small council laughing at the jibe aimed at Jaime. Tommen isn't there because he's too young. Jaime's not there because he's getting fit for a new hand, but he probably would be as bored as Tommen would be. And they're all like, "Oh, you're so funny, Cersei." Right. And it's just like, I do get that she wants to belittle him to reduce his power. That makes a certain amount of sense from her skewed worldview. But
right.
Also, that sycophancy of the small council is not good news for those of us who think that Cersei's not making great decisions.
Yes. On all points, yes.
Yeah.
And Jaime told her last chapter, "I am not your enemy. Kevin is not your enemy. Quit making foes of friends." It feels, that whole thing about, good, let them laugh at him, it makes him less of a threat, feels very much Mad Queen vibes. Just it kind of made me think of Aerys Targaryen and Tywin. They were best friends for a long time until Aerys started to get jealous of Tywin's success as Hand of the King. Yeah. Only, let's face it, Jaime and Cersei are a good bit closer. So,
right. That's hopefully true. Yeah. So there's been an influx of sparrows to King's Landing. What does this forebode? I mean, historically, the devout are pretty intolerant of incest, and of course, that is the one cloud that always hangs over Cersei and Jaime.
Right.
So could this spell trouble for Tommen? Yeah, I think it could, right. Especially when coupled with, I mean, she's withholding loan payments back to the Iron Bank, and that's probably bad news. But she also mentioned they're in debt to the faith as well. Right. And they're withholding payments on that. So if the new High Septon has a little bit more about him than the last one, then he could mobilize these sparrows against her for their incest, and at the same time for withholding payments. It's not going to help his mood towards her, that's for sure. And lastly, the other thing that they talk about, the Red Wedding. I mean, it would be easy to build a not necessarily a watertight case, but there's certainly a case that would get the rabble up in arms against Cersei.
Yes, right. Yeah, all those things. I'm a little bit surprised that Cersei has so little interest in choosing who the new High Sparrow is going to be. Even Tyrion was heavily involved in hand-picking the previous High Septon, and her thought was, I don't care who it is, as long as they have more vigor than the previous one. Because her mind is solely focused on what's best for her, which is someone who will side with her in saying that, Tyrion is public enemy number one.
Right, that's all she wants from them, yeah. But you see, Tyrion would be scheming to make sure that the person who gets appointed is that person.
Right.
Whereas Cersei seems disinterested. I mean, I think part of this is the sort of like the lack of personification of the High Septons. They don't take names, so they're all called the High Septons. So they're all basically interchangeable. And so that maybe has lulled her into sort of not thinking about the specifics of the person, because the next one might be very different and it could spell real trouble.
Yes, you're right. They're not all just, popped out of little machines identical from the previous,
Like a Russian doll. Here's the next one. It looks just like the last one.
But Cersei thinks that this influx of thousands of sparrows into the city is the Faith's problem and not theirs. And not by theirs, I mean the Crown's. But, possibly, but they're different from the general refugees who were flooding the city previously, and those turned out to be a big problem. The Sparrows, as you said, they have a common bond. They have the ability to unite and draw others to the Faith. So
we can have actual names for these people. Cersei thinks it might be between Torbert and Reynard for the High Septon position, but Grand Maester Pycelle thinks it might be a brother Olidor, and Qyburn thinks it was going to be Luceron. And I think some of that is just Pycelle and Qyburn just have to choose something different because they are determined to be at loggerheads with one another.
Right. Well, hopefully...
Do you know anything about these guys? Anything?
So I know this. So it's mentioned that Qyburn mentions that Luceron hosted a dinner for 30 of the most devout to basically kind of sweeten the
bribe.
Pot. Yes, let's just face it. Yes, a bribe for votes.
$1,000 a plate. Typical American politics.
If I were a member of the most devout, I would be a bit concerned about attending that dinner party because Luceron's birth name was Luceron Frey.
Oh,
so I would have been looking over my shoulder, and but yeah, it's right on brand, isn't it, for this Frey to be buying votes, even as a Septon.
I like the extra touch that the next day he was out giving hard bread out to the poor of King's Landing,
right?
After
to show his
feasting
piety.
30.
Yes, feasting in the night, handing out bread in the day.
So. News comes from the Vale that the Vale lords are up in arms against Littlefinger Baelish, and Baelish sends a letter to ask for tapestries. I'm surprised a little bit at the loyalty towards Littlefinger here from Cersei, because she actually asks for him to be spared. She won't get involved as long as he's spared. I tried to think why that might be, and then I thought about Giles Hakalugi Rosby, and I realised his presence at the small council table might really make you pine for Littlefinger's machinations.
Yes, I think so. At least Littlefinger is described as witty and has a funny way about him. So
and keeps his lungs inside him.
Yes. No, I think you are absolutely right. Giles Rosby mentions they don't have enough money to do the things they want to do, and Cersei thinks Littlefinger knew how to find money from wherever he found money. He managed to do it. So I think that is why she would like to have him spared and brought back to King's Landing. But what seemed a little bit of an odd detail was the tapestries thing. Robert, so she says, I think it's Harris Swift says, well, has Littlefinger asked for help from us? And she said, no. he barely mentioned that the Lords Declarant, these lords that wrote this letter, are coming to oust him. Yeah, and he mentioned it, and then asked for old tapestries of Robert's, and I thought, what could that be about? That's
Littlefinger never seems to do things casually, but at the same time, maybe he's trying to give off the impression of being casual,
Oh, right, yeah. Just and by the way,
exactly. I'm fine. So unconcerned.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think if I drop them on the Lord's Declarant, it will squish them.
From 600 feet, it just might.
Those big rocks that you have around King's Landing? Can you send me some of those?
I was thinking that possibly he was hoping to hang them in the Eyrie to give him some clout, like he's in with the royal family. These are Baratheon tapestries that used to hang in the Red Keep, itself, or maybe he just really loves hunting scenes. And but I'd really like a good hunting scene on this empty wall here.
and what he does is he amends it to show Lancel plying Robert with alcohol.
There's a seamstress.
Oh, have I got a story on this one for you?
But as far as them not getting involved, the crown again, we know that the Vale Lords are upset that Lysa did not jump into the war on Robb's side. So
right,
it doesn't seem like this motley crew is aware of any such details. But they seem to, if they did have an idea of that's the way the Vale was leaning, they might have been concerned that if these lords take control of the Vale, the Knights of the Vale might ride to the rescue of Riverrun, which is currently being besieged by the Lannisters.
That's a very good point. It's certainly a point that the Ned Starks and Varys of this world would bring up at this point,
Yes, right.
Plus, why would they respect Cersei's wishes if their plan is to take over the Vale and then come in on Robb's side of the... I mean, again, I do worry about coming in on Robb's side of the battle now that, Robb is dead.
Robb is dead, right. Yes, yes. That very well might not happen now that Robb's dead, but it would be something that you'd want to discuss and consider as a possibility.
I also wonder how you're going to enact this don't kill Littlefinger. I mean, are you actually going to send a letter both to Baelish with tapestries and another one to the people at the foot of the mountain saying, you can do whatever you want, just don't kill him,
Right.
But even if you did do that, would they care? They are fighting to take over the Vale because they think they were on the wrong path, and they will stay on the wrong path if they leave Baelish in charge. If they could change path, then why respect the wishes of the crown anyway? You're giving them an asset back if you let Littlefinger go back to King's Landing.
Yeah. Yeah. All stuff that probably should have been considered and wasn't.
Yeah.
So one other decision that comes down from this council meeting here is that Cersei announces they're going to stop payment to the Iron Bank and the Faith until the war is at an end. And that is quite the decision. I really hope she thought it through, and Pycelle thinks that she hasn't thought it through.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that's another one where, hey, it's the kind of knee-jerk idea you might have. Hey, we could just stop paying the bank back, right? I mean, we owe them however much it is. Let's just stop. But we don't know what the Iron Bank's reputation is, but I've got a feeling that they're pretty successful at getting their loans back.
Yes. You would think for
given
a bank,
that they're still around.
Right, and a bank of its size surely has the means of putting pressure on even the royal family of Westeros for repayment.
Exactly.
So much for the Lannisters always pay their debts. She's literally saying, we're not going to pay our debts.
Well, I've said it before. Yes. What they mean is Lannisters get their revenge.
Yes. And of course, the yes men around the table believe it
can't see any problem.
Yes, and wise decision. Only former lackey Grand Maester Pycelle points out the danger of it.
And that's what I mean about his character journey, because, I mean, he is normally the toadiest of lickspittles in the small council. But here he is, standing up to everything that's being said and making valid points, I wonder if it is sort of like, I mean, like we said, this used to be a cast of A-listers and now it's not. And I wonder if that's emboldened him. I also think it might be the presence of Qyburn. He wants to come across as a statesman because Qyburn is there. And also that Qyburn's presence puts a wedge in between Pycelle and Cersei.
Right.
He no longer trusts Cersei because of what she's, that she's taken up with Qyburn.
Yes, all of that. I agree. I agree with all of it. I'm sure at some level he's probably afraid of sticking his head out too far. But compared to the rest of these council members, he's at least challenging Cersei. And I think you're right. I think he has been surrounded. I mean, he's been on the small council for decades and decades. Right. So he's seen a lot of really good small council members, and he's probably seeing this and thinking, these people have no idea what they're talking about.
Right.
As much as I don't want to say something, I feel like I have to, because this is going to end really badly for all of us if I don't.
Yep. And another aspect, I mean, another one where a better small council might talk this through better is the rumblings about the Red Wedding.
Right.
That the people are beginning to rumble that the crown had something to do with it. And obviously it's anathema to have betrayed guest rights, both by the old gods and the new.
Right.
Their plan is to wait for Walder Frey to die. Now, Walder Frey is ancient, but he is also very good at not dying. I mean, he's proven that longer than just about anybody else. Only Maester Aemon can claim a similar level of ability to avoid the stranger.
Now their plan, so their plan is to let Walder die and then hope that the new heir, who is Ryman Frey, doesn't have quite the warm feelings, quite the protective nature over his family members, and will toss some on the sword.
Because that is Walder Frey's sort of true north, is that he protects his family, every single one of them, even the ones he doesn't like.
Right.
And Ryman's going to learn those lessons, and he would have been inculcated with that idea by Walder Frey. But the succession will mean he's got some very serious rivals, and getting rid of those cheaply and easily will be quite appealing, I would think.
Right. Do you remember in the epilogue of A Storm of Swords, the epilogue with Merritt Frey?
Yes.
He was riding to meet the Brotherhood Without Banners, and he was thinking about his place in his family, and he was thinking about the fact that now that Stevron is dead, Ryman is heir, and he felt like Ryman doesn't have the family values that Walder had, and that Stevron was learning from Walder. Ryman didn't get those lessons.
Very good. Good point. So in some respects, they're right, the small council, with the one caveat that Walder Frey is indestructible, and so they might have to wait 10 more years for this to happen, and that's not going to appease the masses.
Yeah, that very well might be the case. They'll wait a decade. But so the rumors continue about the Golden Company breaking their contract with Myr, why it happened, and what they're going to do next now that their contract has been broken.
Where had we heard this before, Mackelly?
So previously, Arianne Martell told Eris Oakheart that Quentyn, she told him about the contract being broken, and then said that her brother Quentyn was probably there speaking with them right now, hiring them to come help him take her crown.
Right.
And now in this chapter, they're talking about the Golden Company either possibly being Stannis buying them, or Qyburn says that he went and talked to Amira's ship, and that the Golden Company are actually headed for Volantis. So again, these rumors spiraling all over the place, and honestly, I mean, really, we don't even know if it matters or not.
Right. It's not very coherent. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, so it's hard to infer what it all means. But one thing I will say, George Martin isn't throwing it in there just for the heck of it.
Right. Unless it's a big red herring, just to keep everybody talking about something that's going to turn out to be a nothing. But at least as of last, we saw Jon hear Stannis talk of his plans. There was no mention of the Golden Company. So that, that wasn't true last we heard. Now, Qyburn's saying that he heard the Golden Company are headed for Volantis and not Dorne, as Arianne Martell told us. Volantis makes me think that possibly they're headed either to align with or to go against Dany in Meereen, because they're heading in that direction at least. Interesting.
To the north, because this chapter covers everything that's ever happened in this book.
It does.
It's a summary of the previous 5 books. The northern houses are beginning to rally to Ramsay Bolton. The Umbers, Risewells, Manderlys get specifically mentioned. A surprise, yes and no, because as I said last time we talked about this, the rally here is to get the Iron Islanders out of Moat Cailin, and that is an easy sell to the Northerners. Everyone will join you in that quest.
Yeah.
The harder sell is for the Boltons to become the power in the North. That's not... Just joining them on this does not mean you're saying you're our liege lord anymore.
Right. Because, especially the Umbers and Manderlys, they were pretty strong Stark supporters. And they, along with most of the North, were pretty anti-Bolton after the Donella Hornwood death.
Right.
So, yes, I think what you're saying makes sense. Bond together to get the Ironborn out of Moat Cailin and get them out of the North. And then we'll see how they align.
And of course, conceivably, Ramsay could prove himself to them, but I mean, that doesn't seem like Ramsay. More likely he'll do something revolting and evil and put them all off. But,
right.
But at the same time, if they are successful, then Ramsay will meet up with his now father, Roose, and they'll march off into the north as the conquering heroes. And so maybe it will become a fait accompli that they are the power in the north.
It could be. I will say Wyman Manderly is in a tough spot because his son Willis is in the hands of the Lannisters. So,
right. Which is also therefore bad news for Davos Seaworth, because
it is, yes.
If Davos has been taken prisoner by the Manderlys, if the Manderlys want their son back, they may have to do what Cersei demanded, which is to kill Ser Davos.
Yeah, so we've got some good news, bad news here for Davos. Good news, he's not dead. Last we saw him,
that's right.
Stannis was looming over him with Lightbringer. Bad news is he seems to be a prisoner in White Harbor and now sentenced to die by the Queen. So
from the frying pan into the fire. It's been quite the ride for Ser Davos. Yes. Oh, we did get confirmation of something we've long suspected, that the fake Arya is Jane Poole.
Yes.
Not quite confirmation.
Close to, but pretty close.
Enough for us to conclude it, I think.
We made that conjecture when Jaime realized that this girl was not Arya Stark. But in this chapter, Cersei, I can't remember if she says it or thinks it. I think she just thinks it, because this is not something you'd want to say out loud. But that
doesn't always stop her.
But... right. As long as the girl plays her role, no one will ever know that she's a steward's whelp tricked up by Littlefinger, which is exactly fits Jane Poole, who was steward's whelp. And Littlefinger, last we saw her, she disappeared with Littlefinger. So,
another POV character who might want to look over his shoulder is Jon Snow. The plot is quite sinister and quite effective. Again, coming back to Cersei isn't stupid. It's a pretty strong plot. The one thing I'll say is the plot relies on Osney Kettleblack very much to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Seduce the Queen. That's not going to be as easy as you think, because she's not stupid.
Yeah.
Then don't get killed for that crime. And then go to the Wall, and then kill Jon Snow, then get pardoned from the Wall, and then marry Cersei and live happily ever after.
Right. A lot of moving parts in that plan. I hope he's up to the task.
Exactly.
But the small council considers the Night's Watch having taken Stannis' side because he's giving Stannis food and shelter. Or you could also say Stannis answered his call for help and he is at the Night's Watch, where he would receive food and shelter for his effort. So,
if there were 10,000 Lannister troops up at the wall, they would also get food and shelter.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So, but Jon has been concerned about Stannis taking a mile when given an inch. And, so but, I could definitely see how you could you could slant things to look like Jon is completely complicit with Stannis.
But if the Night's Watch don't come down off the wall and help Stannis win back his throne, then they're true to their vows, as far as I can see. But I think it is the thing about that plot is it's very difficult for Jon Snow to detect it, because getting 100 dungeon denizens from King's Landing is exactly what you'd expect when you send a letter asking for help. And so the fact that they're being sent to murder him will be hard to detect, I feel.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Osney Kettleblack doesn't have to mention, I'm Osney Kettleblack. My brother's a member of the Royal Kingsguard,
Yeah.
But Cersei is just beside herself with glee over this plan to kill Jon. She like we were saying last week, she just loves the espionage and plots for destruction of her enemies.
So Osney has done her valiant service and was rewarded with sex previously, but we don't know what that is, right?
We don't. No, but I'm going to discuss some thoughts and ideas in our spoiler section.
Oh, exciting. The one thing I'll say about this plot is that she culminates it with something not subtle enough, I feel, because she doesn't know Taena's true motives. She thinks she trusts Taena, but she also knows that it's possible that she's being played by Taena, right?
Right.
But she tells Taena exactly what to tell Marjorie, which is, ooh, I hear somebody fancies you. And then to not give it up too easily, but eventually let her know that it's Osney Kettleblack. It's like, that's the key to the plan, and you're saying it right up front to someone you barely trust.
Right. She told Jaime last chapter, I know that she goes and tells Marjorie everything that I say, so I feed her what I want Marjorie to know. But at the same time, she tells me everything Marjorie's thinking. Well, if that's the case, then you need to be much more subtle about the Osney Kettleblack part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just let it slip to Taena that Osney Kettleblack fancies Marjorie Tyrell.
And then say, don't tell Marjorie, whatever you do, don't tell Marjorie.
Right, yes.
So, it just felt like she'd really decided, I'm just going to completely trust Taena, and what could go wrong?
Right, yeah. But, the chapter ends as so often with Cersei.
Finally.
The chapter ends with her thinking of how she is made to rule, and she's just so proud of this elegant plan to rid the world of Marjorie Tyrell. And it just kind of reminded me of that night that Tyrion was laying in bed with Shay, thinking about how he had the title, the power, and the girl. And it seemed to us at the time like he might have been counting his blessings a bit too early. Now,
just asking the gods, what could you do to me?
Right. Now, Cersei is in a lot stronger position than Tyrion was as acting Hand of the King at that time. But the chapter still ends with her dreaming of him. So, no matter how pleased she is with herself, Tyrion is still on her mind.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some spoilers. You've missed out on this section if you're not a member of our Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer upper tiers. Please join and get to hear what we say next. Well, when I say we, it's mostly Mackelly, because this is stuff that he remembers that I don't. All right, do you have some background for us?
I do. So Sir Harris Swift is the head of House Swift. He's also the new Hand of the King to Tommen Baratheon. But the Swift seat is Cornfield in the southeastern portion of the Westerlands. Their sigil is a blue rooster on a yellow field, and their words are, "Awake, awake," which makes sense being that their sigil is a rooster, I guess.
I suppose so.
Yeah, the Swifts seem to be a house of landed knights, as the head of the house is called the Knight of Cornfield. He is Sir Harys Swift, not Lord Harys Swift.
Right.
However, during the Dance of the Dragons, there was a Lord Swift. So it seems that possibly the house once had full nobility of lords and lost it somewhere along the way. I don't know. I'm just kind of conjecturing there. We actually have had another Swift in the story recently, and she was mentioned in this chapter by vomiting at the sight of the head. Jocelyn Swift is a lady in waiting to Cersei, but there's no described connection between her and Harys. So,
okay.
Other than the last name, and possibly the most famous member of the family historically, happened to be a bastard. Sir Addison Hill, a.k.a. the Bastard of Cornfield, was one of the knights chosen by Visenya Targaryen to fill out Aegon the Conqueror's original Kingsguard. And he actually came up last chapter when Jaime was naming off Kingsguard brothers to Loras. Jaime told us then that Sir Addison rose to Lord Commander despite being a bastard.
Okay, good stuff. Compared to the television show, the severed head of the dwarf is also not Tyrion's in the TV show. Qyburn wants the head for his experiments, so he's actually kind of grateful for the head beheading. Cersei lets the murderers go for the same reasons.
Okay.
Qyburn is to be the new Master of Whisperers, and there will be no Hand of the King until Tommen is old enough to decide upon a candidate for himself. Mace Tyrell is the new Master of Coin, in addition to his duties as Master of Ships, and Kevin is made Master of War. Mace preens at this new responsibility, but Pycelle is outraged at Qyburn's promotion, and Kevin is disgusted at Cersei's blatant power play. He denounces Cersei as nothing more than the Queen Mother, and denounces the small council as a bunch of sycophants, walks out saying he'll await King Tommen's own instructions at Casterly Rock. Now, I will say that one of the things that's happened in the TV show that I've sort of bounced over is that Jaime is headed to Dorne, I think taking Balon Swan's role here.
Oh, yes, I recall this, yes.
Yeah, so... Pedantry Corner, I didn't have anything. It was just too much.
There was too much. Maybe if there was time to dissect it, we would have come up with something, but...
News and notes.
Well, a new writer is taking a crack at writing a pilot for the 10,000 Ships Game of Thrones spin-off focusing on Nymeria and her Rhoynar. George Martin wrote in his blog this week that Ebony Booth has been tasked by HBO and himself to give a new pilot for the proposed show a go. Although he's unsure how they'll pay for the anticipated lofty production costs of such a show. Now, this isn't the first time we've heard of a writer putting together material for this proposed series. In April, Brian Helgeland revealed during an interview with Inverse that back in 2017, he worked on a script for a show based on Queen Nymeria. And more recently than that, Amanda Siegel took a crack at writing for the project. As of now, we don't know where either of those attempts stand, but the project seems to be still shelved, but not dead.
Yes, thank you. There's only a couple of weeks left to buy merchandise from our Threadless site. We'll be closing the doors at the end of June 2024, so get your merchandise now before it's too late. And we won't be having an episode on the first week of July because we're both away.
That's right. And we have a review. It's a very nice review from DWags5 on Apple Podcasts. I have a hunch we know DWags5 pretty well.
Do we?
I think so. Good. Yes. I believe it's one of our dearest sustainers.
Okay. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, I'll tell you if you don't come up with the answer. Anyway, the review goes like this. It's titled Like a Fine Wine. This podcast is like a fine wine, only getting better with time. My only complaint is they both have jobs and can't do more than one episode a week. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, we complain about that too.
Yes.
Well, thank you, DMAX5. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Let's conclude this one. It's been a massive one. Cersei's certainly been successful at surrounding herself with people loyal to her, or at least people she perceives as loyal to her.
Right. Yeah. The small council is made up entirely of yes men, and the original yes man is now the only one who's even doing any pushing back against her.
Amazing, really, to hear Grand Maester Pycelle be so... Yeah.
And, they're all lower lords. And as you said, that doesn't mean that they can't be brilliant and that, great strategists. But these men do not seem to have been hired for their strategy.
It's very hard to be a brilliant strategist and thinker if you don't do your homework.
Right. Yes, that is a problem. I agree.
Lord Giles isn't sounding too good, so hopefully for Cersei, Littlefinger is deposed in the Vale and sent packing home so that he can take back over on the small council.
Right. Yeah. I do worry about Lord Giles. That cough is sounding pretty problematic. So I hope maybe Maester Pycelle can give him something to ease his issues.
We know Pycelle's good at that kind of thing. If Pycelle was giving me medicine, I'd want sort of like very clear instructions about, am I in the Queen's good graces right this second? That's what I want to know.
That is probably something you'd want to determine first. Mm-hmm. And speaking of people who aren't in such good shape, it does seem that the mountain has finally died, which is kind of shocking, quite honestly.
It is. It did seem like he was going to pull through, but apparently not. Cersei besmirches Jaime's name to prevent him from being a threat, to sort of like diminish him in the eyes of the small council.
Yep.
Probably successful, but not good news for Cersei.
Alienating friends and relatives, bringing untested people into her inner circle. We've said it a million times. She's not on a great path right now.
But this untested council has made some pretty major decisions to do nothing about the infestation of Sparrows, to stop payments to the Faith and the Iron Bank, to kill Jon Snow, to pretend that you can just wait for Walder Frey to die before doing anything about the Red Wedding.
Right.
That's a lot of consequential decisions made, and I'm not sure they were all thought through to the fullest.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how it plays out and what the ramifications are. What there might be, maybe some will work, some won't. I mean, that's the way it goes with decisions, I guess. But some of these, as we've discussed, aren't entirely thought through necessarily. Right. So, but the Queen is using her sexuality as both a weapon and a reward here. And
as she is wont to do, we know that.
Yes.
She even tried it with Ned Stark.
Right, that's true. Yes, you're right. Is there any chance Jaime doesn't find out about this? He's around.
Yeah, my guess is he'll hear whisper of it and then add it to the list of things he tries not to believe.
Yeah, maybe.
Moon Boy, Osney Kettleblack,
Lancel, and Osford Kettleblack. Now, I mean, these rumors are out of control. People, you must stop. And unfortunately, Osney proves Sir Aerys Oakheart correct when Oakheart thought about how men are weak and so often betrayed by their desires.
Yeah.
And here he is he's got to deep down know this is I'm assuming so much risk in this plan.
Yeah. I mean, but again, we don't quite know the games the Kettleblacks are playing, because it could be that he's willing to take whatever she offers him, because that's not his real reward. His real reward is to ultimately betray her and get a reward from someone else.
Like Littlefinger, who...
Exactly, yeah.
Who Littlefinger believes the Kettleblacks ultimately work for him.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there is some risk for her. She has just spoken out loud the fact that she wants to have Marjorie killed. First attainted and then killed.
Yeah. I mean, I think also, but probably what she's thinking is what Osney Kettleblack doesn't know anybody, a Tyrell, who he could confide in.
Right.
I mean, apart from Loras, obviously, who's right there.
Right. Yeah, that is the issue, right? Is it's his word against hers necessarily. Who's he going to go tell that is going to be able to do much of anything?
The time to do it is when you get caught in bed with Marjorie and say, what happened was...
You see, what happened was... Here's the thing about this. Wasn't my idea. The Queen put me up to it.
Not this one, the other one.
The other one, yeah.
Honestly, it's both of them, really. It's not me.
I'm really the victim here. I'm caught in the middle of all this.
And she's played this odd game with Taena where she really confides way too much of the story in Taena in the hope that it doesn't get back to Marjorie, but it's not how I would have done it.
Yeah, she was all out there.
It's not how I would have done it to someone I really trusted.
Right. Let alone someone you think is probably a double agent.
Exactly. All right, next time we have another first-time POV. This one is the Iron Captain. It's exciting.
Yes, heading back to the Iron Islands. See how we left that with a lot of chaos going on. So it'd be good to get back there. So
this could be the King's Moot.
Yes, could be.
Exciting. Looking forward to that. Well, there's 4 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review, as DWAGS5 did. You could buy merchandise, last chance to buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal, and there you can join us at any of the various sustain levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest, and if you join at the higher levels, you get the spoiler chat. You can make a donation directly to our cause at ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keeping up on the latest Ghost of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you can always check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.